Let's get emotional with Gary Vaynerchuk. Welcome back, mere mortalites, to another edition of the Mere Mortals book reviews. The book reviews to transcend you beyond your mere mortality. Juan here, and today I have Gary Vaynerchuk's latest book, 12 and a Half, Leveraging the Emotional Ingredients Necessary for Business Success. Now, a couple of things before I begin. One, this is the only Gary Vaynerchuk book that I have read. He has quite a few from beforehand as well. Two, I also have 72 copies of Gary Vaynerchuk's book. If you want to know why, there is a little podcast episode that we have, but I'll also mention a few notes at the end of this little review as well, so make sure you stick around. So Gary Vayner's other books as well is Crushing It, How to Great Entrepreneurs Build Their Business and Influence and How You Can Too, Jab, 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 Right Hook, How to Tell Your Story in a No-See Social World. There's Ask Gary V, the Thank You Economy, and Crush It. Why now is the time to cash in on your passion. So those are all the other previous books that Gary Vaynerchuk has written, and 12 and a Half is the latest, and it's actually came out just this year. Let me give you a little bit of detail about Gary Vaynerchuk himself. Originally born in Belarus, he's an entrepreneur, author, speaker, internet personality, co-founded restaurant reservation software Resy, which was acquired for like 9 figures, Empathy Wines, which was also acquired. He's chairman and CEO of VaynerX, which is basically a subsidiary of a whole host of other companies, VaynerMedia, Vayner NFT, Sasha Group, hell, you name it, this dude's doing a hell of a lot. And I personally follow Gary for quite a few years as well. But onto the actual book itself. So 12 and a Half. What is it all about? So the book itself is split into 3 very separate sections. First section, 1, actually goes into the emotions, the actual traits that the book actually talks about. And I want to just pull them out because I want to make sure that we don't miss out on them. So what are those emotional ingredients that Gary talks about? Gratitude, self-awareness, accountability, optimism, empathy, kindness, tenacity, curiosity, patience, conviction, humility, and ambition. And you might be wondering, what's the half? What's the half? It's kind, candor. It's actually noted as half because that's the half that Gary doesn't have fully, or he wouldn't say that he's absolutely 100% with. I think the other emotional ingredients as you run through the actual book, he seems to either have acquired them or have it personally imbued as part of just growing up and being imparted that information from his family. But kind candor was one that he's actually had trouble with, and he actually talks about it in the book. So the first part just talks about specifically those emotional ingredients, what each one of them means, why is it a piece that you should have in business and also in general life. Then the second section actually goes down and delves into, okay, let's look at a multitude, and I'm talking a multitude of different examples of real world scenarios. So let me just pull up a few so you can see what they actually mean. There's actually the part's called real life scenarios. So an example might be, your manager, Olivia, says she needs to see more proactiveness from you. You're surprised because from your perspective, you've been putting in extra effort to come up with ideas to improve your team's performance and output. You've been sharing those ideas with other team members consistently. What would you do? And then Gary goes on to explain and put a little bit of information around, okay, what are those emotional traits that I've talked about at the very start of that book would actually apply here? How might you actually take an action against this as well? Along with these particular examples, there's also follow-up questions as well. So, let's just say for that particular one there, from the manager's perspective, what's one thing Olivia can do to get the best performance out of the employee? And then, again, a little bit of an answer behind that. And this really leads back exactly to how Gary really interacts with questions and how he might actually structure information. So a little bit of tidbit from him, from listening to so many of his podcasts and also presentations that he gives. He's very much a person that will give, let's say for a 1-hour presentation, basically 10 minutes of info, bang, 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 and then he'll actually want to get into Q&A. He wants to hear about what people are actually asking and then be able to answer. So it's a little bit more tailored to what the individual is actually looking to gather from it or garner the information. And that's sort of what this book tries to go through. It goes through a multitude of different real life scenarios. I think there's probably more than 25, I believe there was, and actually goes into a response into each one. And then the actual final chapter there actually goes through exercises, so part 3. And here's probably one that I might challenge back on Gary with some of these exercises. Because I'm going to give you an example of, let's just say, accountability. Let's say accountability. So what's the exercise that Gary recommends? 1. So think about time recently when you deflected blame on someone else for something that was your fault. Post a video or photo on the social media platform where you have the most followers and apologize for it. Use the hashtag #AccountabilityGaryV, hashtag. I'll be scrolling through and giving love to as many of you as I can. So my problem with these sort of examples is, 1, let's just say an individual that's going through and having a look at this doesn't use a social media platform. And I know, I can hear Gary already. Why are you not on there? I don't care if you're 20 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old. You should have a social media platform. Look, Gary, we get it. I get it. But I also think some of these exercises probably could be done in other ways. There is different ways you can probably harness accountability. Am I going to say them right now? No, because I haven't thought about them off the top of my head. However, I think that it doesn't have to be specifically using social media. However, you've got to remember, Gary's actually got an absolute massive background when it comes into social media. Why? Because he basically built up his mum and dad's alcohol business as one of the first online retailers for wine over in the US, using mail as well as all these different things back in whenever it was, in the 1990s basically, right? So he's been born and bred and knows the sort of stuff like the back of his hand. It just makes sense that he also recommends exercises which are aligned to social media, to technology. So do all of these exercises that were pointed out were things that I might do? Well, look, some of them, no, not really, to be absolutely quite frank. Others, however, like tenacity, one of the recommendations there was he wants you to do push-ups every day for 55 days. On the 55th day, you actually then go ahead and make a video talking about the push-ups, etc., and do again a #GaryV 55 days. Now, the bit there of tenacity of go and challenge yourself to go and do something for a certain period of time. You might also call it discipline, but that tenacity, that availability to do it, hell, that's a fantastic idea for an exercise. Do you have to post on social media? Meh, I'm not nor here nor there. I guess from Gary, it's that's an accountability perspective. For me, it's if you can actually do that as an exercise, I think you'll help to build up that invaluable skill, which is tenacity. So what are the themes of the book? Well, it's pretty easy to see. It is about emotions and how to deal with them. That's very simple. But I'm going to blend this as well into my personal thoughts with the book, which is Gary is a fantastic speaker. Let me put that out right now. He knows how to speak, whether it's a podcast or he's presenting. Dude knows how. Gift of the gap. However, this book, like a few others that I've also read, is very much like someone's put together, and who knows exactly how this was created, but how someone's actually just spoken out the particular words that they were thinking in their mind, and it's been jotted down into words, and then that has been altered slightly, obviously, so it's more of a readable format. But it screams to me that a lot of this content is a lot of things I've probably heard from Gary Vaynerchuk, from a lot of other videos and presentations that he has done. Summarized into a book, it's good, but it's not great. I think that the best way to consume Gary Vee is probably not in the written format. It's going to be in the video. It's going to be in the audio format. Why? Because the fast acting when it comes to his conversations with people and directing in terms of questions is phenomenal. That's what he does best. That sort of thinking on his toes, using old style information that he has and sort of intuition. If you think to the Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, it's sort of that system 1. He's a strong system 1. He's able to really quickly with intuition, not so much that system 2 where you slow down, you really process it through. That's probably not how I would explain Gary Vaynerchuk. And so this articulation in the book for me goes, okay, it's informative, I get the point, but I don't know if it's thought out as well as it probably should have. The other take on this book as well is that, and it's not a hit as opposed to, I just wished that it actually would have been a little bit longer. Now, I know I often don't say this. This book is fairly short. It's 185 pages, 200 pages. But some of the actual pages, and I'll just show that here, are actually quite short. So what I showed, if you're listening to the audio right now, is some of these pages are pretty large words, and the page itself only has half the page filled with words, and the rest is blank. And these are particularly to the exercises. So you do go through the book really, really quickly. But what I would have wished probably was that the examples, the real life scenarios, probably could have been shorter for me, to be honest. After 10 scenarios, I really probably understood what it was getting at in terms of the how you should go in with gratitude and the positivity and the tenacity, but also not relying on negative emotions, but actually allowing those positive emotions to help feed you. But what I would probably have wished from this book is to see those original emotional ingredients probably be explored a lot more. So that might be for optimism, let's just say. I'm just going to quickly just count those. Let's just say self-awareness. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages to self-awareness. I just, for me, it would have gone, I would have been also if you could have broken them down into more detailed, maybe a little bit of scientific backing, maybe some other explanations that probably are beyond just the ecosystem that Gary interacts with as well. But again, that would probably been too up. That's probably an expectation of myself that's a little bit too much of who Gary Vaynerchuk is, and probably not what I should have been expecting from this book regardless. But I guess I came into that, so I had a little bit of a bias behind it and got a little bit disappointed of the emotional ingredients. Now, in summary to Gary Vaynerchuk's 12 and a half, leveraging the emotional ingredients necessary for business success, I will say I actually give it a 6 out of 10. A 6 out of 10. Why? 2 points. One, I probably came in with a bias. I was expecting a lot more from the emotional perspective and some of the detailed breakdown. 2, those examples in the middle took up a lot of time or a lot of space within the book, and I felt I got quite a lot of the information and ideas that Gary was putting towards it fine, but really could have been probably cut down, to be honest. And lastly, for me, those exercises, while they were probably ideal for someone who is really confident to be utilizing social media, I just felt could have been more generalized. So even me, who I am comfortable with using social media, I thought I get some of these ideas, and for sure, I know I've got many halves when it comes to some of these emotionals, and half, again, a reminder here is things that there's a particular emotional trait that you aren't 100% confident with or you're still working through. But there's probably other ways that actually I can work on them as opposed to the examples provided. Maybe if there was been a few more examples. But really, it's not so much a hit on the book itself. Not so much a hit on the book or the way it was written by Gary, because honestly, Gary is best consumed via audio/video. I don't totally believe by book. How would I recommend you actually go and read this? Probably go and rent it out. However, I'm going to stop here and actually talk about what I mentioned a little bit earlier on this book review, which was, yes, I had 72 copies of this book, and I did a podcast on this originally as to the why. Basically, a little bit of information or summary of that. For every 12 books that you actually purchased of Gary's 12 and a half, you also were provided with an NFT, which at this point in time, I still don't have. However, what I do still have is around 40 odd copies as of today's date, which is the 26th of December, 2021. So what can I say is that if you actually really want to go and read this book, if you really are thinking, look, I want to understand what I was talking about, or you like Gary Vaynerchuk, or you weren't able to grab the book, what I am going to do is the first 10 people who comment on this video on YouTube or send through a Boostagram to the Me Immortals channel asking me to send it through, I will connect up with them and I will send you this book absolutely free of charge. I'll take care of all the posting and whatnot, just as a little bit of a, people interacting with us, helping you share something and see what you think of the book as well. Me Immortalites, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the review of 12 and a half by Gary Vaynerchuk. Take care, folks, wherever you are in the world. One out.